Imagine stepping off a bus in Canada with just $200 in your pocket, a single suitcase, and a fierce promise to yourself that you would break free from every limit you had ever known. That is exactly what Tony Beets did when he first arrived in the bitter cold of the Yukon nearly 5 decades ago. Today we know him as the rough and rugged star of Gold Rush, a man whose name now carries the weight of millions in assets, acres of claims, and a reputation that echoes through the frozen Klondike. But back then, there was no crew cheering him on, no cameras rolling, and no lavish lifestyle to entice him. Everything he had was his own grit, his own ideas, and $200 that had to cover everything. That contrast between humble beginning and global fame is what makes his story so magnetic. Before the Gold Rush cameras ever caught his grizzled face, Tony's journey began in a tiny village in the Netherlands called Wijden. It was a place so small that everyone knew your business before you could finish telling a story. As a child, he shared a room with his brothers, slept and rose every sunrise to milk dozens of cows on his parents' farm. There were no weekends off, no allowances, and no chances lost when a hand froze on an icy milk pail. Every blister on his hands, every hour bending under frigid wind became a lesson in perseverance. When his mother collapsed during a calving season and his father's arthritis set in early, he absorbed responsibilities far beyond his years. When his parents could no longer keep the farm afloat, he took on jobs that tested his limits and never looked back. These trials forged a work ethic that would pay off in ways he couldn't foresee. In 1980, Tony and his wife Minnie left everything familiar behind. They stepped onto Canadian soil with exactly $1,200 between them and zero command of English. Their first job in Abbotsford's mushroom houses was a grind beyond imagination. They worked in windowless rooms where forklifts squealed through stacks of rotting compost and ammonia tangs stung their nostrils. After 8 brutal months of 10-hour shifts, they ate soggy sandwiches in a cold basement, their wages barely covered. Then disaster struck on a Vancouver construction site when a storm collapsed scaffolding and left Tony with a fractured skull. The payout from that hospital bill would be the single largest sum they had ever held, but it left him with a deep-seated distrust of any boss who put profit over safety. So instead of returning to a foreman's whistle, he invested every cent in a beat-up pickup, a handful of tools, and a fierce vow to never work for anyone but himself. His real breakthrough came in the Siberian-like winters of Yukon's Klondike, when he landed a bulldozer gig on the Guggenheim Creek operation. Nobody expected much from the Dutch kid with no gold experience, and on day one he drove straight into a sluice box, causing thousands in damage. Most newcomers might have folded, but Tony turned that disaster into his advantage. He threw himself into 12-hour shifts, patched machinery with junk metal, and learned every gear and lever until he could tame any machine in the mud and ice. Within weeks he went from liability to legend when he repaired a broken conveyor system that had stalled the entire camp. His bosses doubled his pay, and word spread like wildfire among crews. This was more than a job, it was the proving ground for a man who thrived when the cold crushed the faint-hearted. Tony's relentless spirit carved his destiny from frozen, unforgiving mud. By 1986, Tony had scraped together enough savings to lease his first claim for $5,000. He pulled out 20 ounces of gold, only to have spring floods wash away half his haul and half his gear. Instead of quitting, he innovated a portable water pump system that reclaimed more gold and saved his season. Each setback sharpened his instincts. Each narrow escape built his legend. That fierce blend of creativity and stubbornness became his signature. He refused to accept defeat, and with every claim he filed, he grew bolder. By the time he bought Tamarack in 1990, for over $1 million, he had already proven that a dream could be mined as surely as gold. That acquisition marked the rise of a mining tycoon whose dredges and excavators would soon define a new era of televised mining. Every Gold Rush fan sees Tony's resolve turn claims into gold. His drive remains unseen. Beyond his victories lay a crucible of personal drama that would forge Tony's persona. His crew was a patchwork of prospects, trusted friends and family members carrying their own hopes on weary shoulders. Minnie, his wife, became the strategist, managing ledgers when drilling rigs froze in midwinter. Their son Kevin arrived on site craving affirmation but collided with Tony's standards. One dawn, A thawing pump ruptured under Kevin's watch, flooding the sluice yard with icy slurry and halting production. Tony's jaw clenched as he surveyed the damage, words left unspoken but understood. Failure was a luxury this camp could not afford. That moment fractured relationship, yet Kevin worked overtime to rebuild pipes and prove his father's belief was not misplaced. Even triumph had its shadows. Tony once partnered with Jake Morrison, dazzled by bold gold reports that turned out to be fabricated. They invested $20,000 expecting a rich strike, only to unearth empty gravel beds. Emotions boiled over when Tony confronted Jake on a Yukon street, fists thrown and words exchanged with force to shatter trust. A courtroom verdict delivered a harsh lesson: never trust numbers without validation. Though Tony lost half his savings, his reputation among honest miners soared. He tightened every agreement, demanded full geological surveys and claims data before risking his hard-earned capital again. His battles with environmental regulators became as legendary as any gold haul. In a bid to honor Viking traditions, Tony set a remote pond ablaze, performing a ritual of fire and smoke. The spectacle backfired when charred debris seeped into Hunker Creek, killing fish and triggering a $30,000 fine under water protection laws. Local authorities suspended his water license in response, threatening to stall mining operations entirely. Rather than concede, Tony stormed public hearings, Dutch accent crackling with anger as he denounced bureaucrats for strangling hard-working communities. Behind the scenes, he funneled profits into a cutting-edge water recycling system, ensuring no regulator could ever shut him out again. One of his most audacious gambles involved resurrecting a colossal dredge built during the 1930s. To most, it was a derelict hulk best left to rust and legend. Tony saw an opportunity. He borrowed heavily, mortgaging Paradise Hill and pulling his machines from operation to free funds. During winter storms, he and a skeleton crew worked 20-hour days stripping corrosion, rewiring pumps and fabricating new bucket chains from spare steel. Arctic winds howled through open hatches as they re-welded hull plates in sub-zero conditions. When the dredge thundered to life in a midsummer thaw, it churned through thousands of tons of riverbed gravel, unearthing more gold in weeks than some operations pulled in entire seasons. Triumph elevated Tony's status from a resourceful operator to a visionary force in the Klondike. In front of the Gold Rush cameras, his reputation exploded during a bitter clash with Parker Schnabel. Tensions soared as a critical breakdown loomed and Parker's suggestions grated on Tony's nerves. On live microphone, he unleashed a torrent of profanity-laced invective, accusing Parker of entitlement and ignorance. The clip became a viral sensation, racking up millions of comments and fanning online debate. Discovery executives recognized a phenomenon and retooled the show around his unpredictable presence. They doubled his pay per episode, expanded his screen time, and even drafted scripts to provoke his fierce honesty. Audiences clocked in not just for gold yields, but for Tony's authentic, unfiltered moments. Despite his newfound celebrity, and a salary that outpaced many corporate executives, Tony's priorities remained firmly planted in producing gold, not scripted pageantry. Rather than indulge in lavish tastes during the 10 stressful months of mining, he reinvested more than 70% of his TV earnings into heavy dredges, excavators and prospects in remote regions. Still, when the season paused, he escaped to a modest oceanfront condo in Puerto Vallarta, trading snowdrifts for lush coconut palms and sea breezes. Yet on site, his refuge remains a Spartan cabin, furnished only with a weathered couch and a fridge stocked with chocolate milk. That stark contrast, a life toggling between frost-bitten survival and sunlit luxury, became the signature of his legend, inspiring fans around the world. Today at 65, Tony Beets still greets each dawn with that same fierce determination that drove a Dutch farm boy to conquer the Yukon. His network of claims spans hundreds of acres, his fleet of machines valued in the millions. Yet he remains grounded in the grit that built his fortune. His defiance of scripted drama and reliance on raw innovation ensure his legacy endures with extraordinary resilience. The Klondike will remember his name forever. That is the story of a man who built luxury on his own brutal terms. Mirroring the Klondike's tundra, Tony's journey has been one of extremes, searing triumphs and near catastrophes carved into every ridge of his story. By the early 2000s, He had transcended the role of roughneck operator to become a mining impresario, whose very name sold network slots and sparked social media fever. But to understand how he turned raw grit into gold, and an entire genre of reality television, you need to walk in his boots through the seasons of his life, each one marked by a defining battle. After the dredge revival that cemented his daring reputation, Tony's next frontier was management. He roped in a core team, seasoned heavy equipment welders, veteran sluice engineers, and a handful of scrappy locals who knew every treacherous mile of the Klondike's riverbeds. He trained them in his hands-on boot camp, 12-hour days spent diagnosing frozen hydraulic hoses, rebuilding sub-zero engines with whatever scrap metal lay around, and devising improvised warming shelters when camp heaters failed. Tony's mantra was simple: if you can't fix it with wire and duct tape, you're not thinking hard enough. That ethos paid off when a late winter equipment breakdown threatened to end the season early and cost the crew thousands of ounces. Instead of quitting, they spent 3 days patching together parts scavenged from abandoned operations, and by dawn on day 4 they were back to mining full throttle. The result? A haul that shattered the camp's previous record by 25% and proved that innovation in the field was worth more than gold itself. But the relentless pace came at a price. In 2005, a routine maintenance mishap saw Tony dive into a freezing sluice pond to retrieve a jammed conveyor belt. He emerged with hypothermia and battered ribs, his crew dragging him to the nearest medical station before racing against time to warm him. For weeks afterward, he wore an ace bandage around his chest, every breath a reminder that no man is invincible, even a legend. Yet this brush with mortality only reinforced his conviction that risk was the currency of reward. He returned to work with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to squeeze every ounce of potential from his claims, and every season he pushed the limits further. Off camera, Tony's mind was equally active. He began scouting new territories, poring over geological surveys and satellite imagery in the waning hours of each night. By 2007, he had locked down 3 promising claims near Indian River, each one rumored to hold ancient glacial deposits rich in fine gold. He struck a deal with local First Nations communities to secure water access and labor support, navigating cultural protocols with genuine respect, an evolution from his earlier, more combative stances with regulators. In return, he built a shared training program to teach young community members how to operate heavy machinery, creating a pipeline of skilled workers who earned above-average wages. This move not only stabilized his workforce, but also strengthened his social license to operate, turning potential conflict into collaboration. That same year, Tony's negotiations caught the eye of Discovery executives, who saw an opportunity to film deeper into the mining process. They proposed a multi-episode arc, focusing on the engineering marvels behind large-scale gold recovery. Tony agreed, on one critical condition: no scripted lines, no staged stunts, just pure unfiltered mining life. The resulting episodes offered viewers unprecedented access to the mechanics of sluice design, gravity separation techniques, and the daily dance with avalanches and sudden spring floods. Ratings soared again, with nearly 4.5 million viewers tuning in. Social media buzz centered on the raw authenticity. Fans complimented Tony's willingness to bear the camera's gaze in the mud, rather than behind a desk. Yet for every on-camera triumph, there was a backstage showdown. In 2008, heavy rains unleashed a wall of floodwater that pulverized roads, washed away vital power lines, and stranded crews for nearly 2 weeks. The cost in lost production neared $500,000, and insurers balked at underwriting further coverage. With winter looming, Tony faced a brutal choice: pack up for the season or rebuild under looming deadlines. He chose the latter, mobilizing his crew in record time to erect makeshift bridges and reroute generators through miles of supply trails. That gamble paid off when 2 months later, the thaw revealed untouched gravel bars with scores of visible gold flakes. The haul replenished the season's losses and underscored Tony's uncanny ability to turn disaster into advantage. Back in Dawson City, Tony had become a living legend, celebrated at town halls and local fundraisers. Yet he never lost sight of what built his empire, the singular industrial heartbeat of his favorite machines. His prized excavators, customized with reinforced undercarriages and heated cabs, became symbols of his relentless will. Each machine bore the scars of countless winters, welded patches, improvised heat vents, and paneling replaced with scrap steel. They weren't showroom models, they were warhorses, a visual testament to a philosophy that prioritized function over form. Whenever a newcomer asked why his fleet looked more battle-ready than brand new, Tony would grin and reply, "These scars are the map of where we've been, and exactly how we got rich." Through it all, Tony never lost the magnetic draw that made him a TV icon, his unfiltered voice. Whether railing against Hollywood BS, when producers tried to stage arguments, or snapping at workers who slacked off during critical shifts, his candor played like dynamite on camera. Behind every blunt sentence was a strategic calculation. Controversy drove ratings, and ratings drove leverage in contract negotiations. By 2010, his per-episode fee had leapt into six figures, and he controlled creative control over major storylines. He refused to appear in rehearsed product placements, insisting any brand integration be tied directly to genuine camp operations, like testing field equipment that he actually used. This insistence on authenticity endeared him to fans and frustrated execs in equal measure. As the second decade of his career dawned, Tony's empire spanned over 300 claims and employed upwards of 50 full-time crew members. Yet despite his towering success, the essence of his story remained rooted in that $200 gamble of 1980. Each season's adrenaline rush, each near-miss breakdown, reminded him, and millions of viewers, that even the richest can survive on lean margins if they possess enough audacity. His story ignites a simple truth: wealth isn't just the sum of your assets, but the depth of your willingness to risk failure in pursuit of vision. Fans around the globe could not get enough, as Tony catapulted into his own spin-off series Gold Rush, The Dirt. With a reported $175,000 per episode, and a crew that rivaled small corporations, he navigated not only sluice boxes but also social media storms. His signature Dutch accent and fierce honesty became media gold, generating millions of shares and comments. Producers once tried to script his reactions, but Tony refused to play the controlled drama, insisting that reality mining meant raw moments, not staged conflict. When cameras caught him tearing through a makeshift camp office in frustration over outdated hydraulics, the clip went viral and boosted the spin-off's debut ratings by 30%. Advertising revenue surged almost overnight, with brands paying top dollar to be associated with his brand of authenticity. Tony's face, weathered by wind and time, became an icon on billboards and sponsored online tutorials, proof that his underdog narrative still resonated with viewers longing for unfiltered ambition. Despite a salary that rocketed past $175,000 per episode, Tony's personal life remained a study in stark contrast. Off-season, he swapped -40 winters for sunlit siestas in a modest oceanfront condo in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, complete with a hot tub overlooking the Pacific. Yet once mining seasons recommenced, his retreat was a bare-bones cabin deep in Yukon bush, where a battered couch and a fridge stocked only with chocolate milk became his luxurious essentials. The dual existence, sun-drenched sanctuary versus freezing survival, sharpened his profile as both mining magnate and modern-day frontiersman. His followers eagerly shared side-by-side photos of the snow-swept cabin and the palm-fringed balcony, fueling FOMO in both extremes. How could a man sleep on a mattress thinner than a diner's paper cushion, then lounge on an infinity-edge terrace a few weeks later? This tension drove engagement on every platform, making him a living study in luxury redefined under brutal conditions. Behind the camera's glare, Tony quietly shaped a social footprint in every mining town he touched. He forged strategic partnerships with First Nations councils, investing in water treatment facilities and training programs that taught young apprentices to operate heavy machinery safely. In Dawson City, local leaders credited him with sponsoring educational scholarships and outfitting community centers with drilling simulators. His fiscal contributions weren't publicized for praise, instead they underscored his belief that a thriving community laid the foundation for a thriving mine. This pragmatic philanthropy contrasted with stereotypical miner stereotypes, framing him as both a hard-charging operator and a considerate neighbor. Fans responded by amplifying his community impact stories, sharing testimonies of beneficiaries who went from curious youths to full-time operators earning six-figure wages before their 25th birthday. In turn, this softened his rugged image just enough to appeal to viewers seeking substance behind the showmanship. For Tony, mining was never just about gold. It was a daily war against complacency and a test of personal mettle. Every morning, he walked through his yard of hulking machines, dozens of Volvo EC950 excavators, custom diesel burners, and the legendary Viking dredge, like a general inspecting artillery. He would issue blunt commands, expecting his crew to execute them with precision. "If that engine sputters, you're looking at thousands of dollars in lost time," he would bark. His off-the-cuff pep talks often went viral for their raw intensity, drawing tens of thousands of viewers to clips where he hammered home lessons on risk management. He narrated tutorials on frost-proof welding techniques and improvised gaskets, weaving in anecdotes about near misses that chilled listeners. That blend of technical expertise and no-nonsense persona built a unique rapport with audiences hungry for both entertainment and practical insight. In his world, every wrench turn could be the difference between a record haul and an emergency evacuation. Yet even as his star rose, Tony remained vigilant against complacency. In 2025, new environmental bonds and stricter habitat restoration rules threatened to paralyze his operation during peak season. Each week of delay meant a staggering $700,000 in lost production, while fixed costs still ran $200,000 for payroll and equipment leases. Rather than bow to bureaucratic inertia, he flew to Whitehorse, rallied local stakeholders at community halls, and personally negotiated permit fast tracks. Videos of those meetings trended on industry forums, showcasing his mix of charm that compelled regulators to relent. Simultaneously, he invested in remote monitoring drones and sustainable gold recovery tech to preempt future disputes. His commitment to reinvest 70% of profits, even from television deals, meant innovation remained his insurance policy. As the latest season wound down, fans watched his journey shift from gold mining to a high-stakes chess match against shifting regulations and evolving technologies. And through every challenge, Tony's promise remained unbroken to harvest fortune on his own uncompromising terms. Tony Beets' story isn't simply about gold. It's about turning adversity into the bedrock of luxury, tracing a path from blistered hands to oceanfront vistas that most can only dream of. Though his Mexican condo may gleam with polished tile floors, panoramic sea views, and a year-round summer breeze, his true sanctuary remains deep in the Yukon's backcountry, a Spartan cabin lit by lanterns and warmed by a single wood stove. When the season shifts into full swing, Tony slides into well-worn coveralls, cracks open a chocolate milk, and straps on the same pair of leather gloves that have guided each wrench turn for decades. That juxtaposition, more than any dredge or excavator, defines the man behind the legend. By 2025, Tony's network of claims had ballooned to 337 parcels, scattered across thousands of rugged acres. Yet he measures success not by acreage alone, but by the number of machines he's coaxed back from oblivion. Each battered Volvo excavator, improvised trommel wash plant, and rebuilt bucket chain tells a story of risk, reinvention, and reward. When his $1 million dredge project teetered on collapse in sub-zero blizzards, when the bucket chain snapped and sank into icy depths, he refused to abandon the mammoth machines he considered family. That resolve delivered a $12 million haul in one record season, proof that unyielding grit can still outpace cutting-edge technology, even in an era of drones and automated rig sensors. But gold mining is more than geology and heavy steel. It's also a human drama written in the language of family loyalty and hard lessons. Minnie, his partner of over 40 years, orchestrated financial strategies that turned precarious seasons into stable platforms. When unexpected fines threatened to drown Tamarack in debt, she quietly negotiated equipment leases and redirected cash flows, ensuring the camp kept turning. Their son Kevin emerged from a father-son rift to become a gold producer in his own right, still indebted to Tony's exacting standards, yet emboldened by the trust he'd fought to earn. Mike, another crew hand who once challenged his father's relentless work quotas, returned with fresh tactics that rescued a dwindling season. These family dynamics, raw and unscripted, became an integral subplot viewers eagerly dissected on social media. Beyond his personal circle, Tony's legacy extends into mining communities that once viewed outsiders with suspicion. He forged alliances with First Nations councils, investing in water recycling infrastructure and vocational training that opened doors to local youth. Apprentices who once hauled ore now run jumbo excavators and earn six-figure salaries by age 25. In turn, those communities became his staunchest allies, championing permit renewals and aiding in habitat restoration projects. This blend of philanthropy and pragmatism set a new standard for extractive industries, transforming the narrative from reckless exploitation to collaborative stewardship without diluting the raw intensity that fans crave. On camera, Tony's trademark bluntness remains his most potent asset. When network producers pushed for staged conflict, he refused with a stare that chilled would-be scriptwriters. "If it's not real, it's not worth filming," he declared, his Dutch accent cutting through the hum of diesel engines. That authenticity fueled spin-offs like Gold Rush, The Dirt, where millions tuned in not for contrived drama, but to witness live-wire exchanges between Tony and his crew over equipment breakdowns, safety scares, and surprise payoffs. Each explosive clash with regulators or rival miners generated headlines, driving viewer engagement and cementing his stature as the industry's unfiltered voice.